Have you achieved success and a high income, but still lack personal fulfillment and work-life balance? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful But Struggling podcast. Join us as Erin, Eunicia, Joanne, and Mim share transformative insights and practical strategies just for you. Discover real stories and lessons that will elevate your personal satisfaction, professional accomplishment, and financial empowerment.
Welcome to another episode of Successful But Struggling. This is Joanne, and I am here with one of my favorite people, Mim Abby, who is our leadership expert. And today we have a treat. We're going to be talking about how exciting it is to get promoted and grow your business. But what are some of the unintended challenges and stressors that can affect your relationships because of those good things that are happening to you? So, Mim, let's go straight to it. So tell us, what are some of those specific stressors and consequences in relationships? How do we know that those are happening?
Well, exactly, Joanne. It is so exciting, as you said, when you are growing your career or you're growing your business, and maybe you've entered leadership for the first time, or maybe you're an executive, but you're not the top executive, but now you're moving up the executive ranks to a higher level. You've moved to senior vice president or executive vice president. And so you're doing all these things right. And now you have this new opportunity. Or if you're have your own business, your business is growing and now you're bringing in more people. So either way, you've got more people reporting to you. You know, there are so many elements to leadership that shift as you grow and you are becoming more strategic. You're leading the business more. You're looking at not just getting that work done, but how do we get more of it done and what direction are we going to take it? But the thing that seems to change the most, or the thing that I would say I have seen more than anything in my work with my clients, is the issues that arise on the rise, which is exciting that you're growing, the issues that arise when it comes to the people, when it comes to the relationships. And these issues that arise, or really these stresses that come up, are very specific, and people don't tend to handle them in the very best way. You know, people are the engine of the business. If you don't have people who want to be doing the work and they want to leap tall buildings for the business and for you, then you're going to get into trouble, because that's where the work gets done. That's where the productivity happens. That's where we get things over the finish line. And that's where we can grow our revenues and we can solve problems and move through obstacles. It's got to be it's the people doing it. And if we don't have their hearts and minds, then we're in trouble. And with the stresses that I see, Joanne, is number one, I hear this so often where leaders will come to me and they'll say, I got promoted over a peer, and now I've got this peer relationship and it's not going so well. We used to be friends. We used to be good friends. I mean, we were shoulder to shoulder doing this work together. And you know, when it's even worse is when somebody gets promoted over the peer and the peer also wanted that role. And so now I'm managing someone who is my buddy, was my buddy. What are they right now? And they're kind of unhappy because they wanted that job and I got that job. So that's one issue. Another issue is you might come in as a leader, and maybe you didn't get promoted in your group, you got promoted to a different part of the company, but you come in as a leader after their beloved former leader, someone that they loved working for and following, and someone who inspired and motivated them. And even though you're wonderful, but you've just come in from outside the group and they don't accept you. So that's a relationship stress. Now, if you own a business, a third relationship stress is, the first one was getting promoted over peers. Second one was they loved the former leader and they don't really accept you. And the third one is, if you own a business and now you're expanding, oftentimes when you expand and you start to bring people into your business, you bring a friend into your business, or you bring a colleague, someone that you used to work with, perhaps internally in a larger organization. And you don't realize that it's a whole new relationship now when you bring them into your company, into your organization. And Joanne, don't even get me started on the final area I'll just mention, which is besides all of these work stresses, of course, as you grow in your responsibilities, it's going to affect your personal relationships as well. So there is a whole, as you can hear, I mean, there's a whole host of things to be looking at and thinking about in terms of people in your relationships when you are in this exciting moment of growth in your career.
Wow, my mind is spinning. It makes me think of sometimes when I'm coaching, is like you're saying, especially professionals and physicians, they'll sometimes come in with the news, oh, I got promoted, I have this new leadership role, or I have this new responsibilities. And my first question to them is this good news? Because we don't always, again, like we were saying, we have good things that are happening. It's so exciting. And we also have to say, and there's this other stressors that might come that we are not prepared, right? So love that in terms of course, if it's a peer or feeling that you have to fill up shoes that it's almost like an on expectations that are too big because people have idealized maybe that previous person. Or I say that a lot, that it seems like a good idea to work with a friend or a previous colleague in a different setting, and it is way more challenging than it sounds. So it's so good to bring this up. And then of course the personal relationships, right? Of thinking, how will this new role affect my energy, my time, what it means at home? So many things to think about. Thank you, Mim.
Well, it's so true. And I really like what you said, because as I think about where people go wrong with all of this, you said something so important, Joanne, is that they don't anticipate it. I love that question that they say, "This is so exciting. I'm being promoted. I'm moving to the next level." And your question, which I'm sure is quite a surprise to them, is that a good thing? Because it seems so obviously like a good thing. And when a good thing comes, we don't often think about the other side of it. And so we don't anticipate, and then it blindsides us.
Yes. And talking about that's a good question to ask. One, how do people tend to react to it, and how is it a negative or a positive, or how does it backfire?
You know, the not anticipating it leads to the not addressing it. And that is the biggest backfire that I see, is that people leave it as the elephant in the room. And Joanne, one of the issues with relationships and with communication is that we've all been communicating in some way since even before we were born, since even in the womb. And you hear pregnant mothers talking about, okay, I'm getting a kick, I'm getting some kind of a message here. I mean, we've been communicating for our whole lives, and so there is this insidious sense that we're not even aware of, that we need to pay attention to it a little bit more. We need to be more intentional about our communication. We just sort of make these assumptions that it's what I'm doing is working, and we're all reasonable human beings, and we've all been communicating, and we'll work it out. People, in essence, they just leave it to chance and assume we're all reasonable people. We're going to be fine. We're going to adjust. So if you were getting promoted over peers, it's really easy to actually not address it. Here they were your friend, or if you're bringing someone into your business, here they were your friend or former colleagues. So now you were just going to do this kind of work together, and not anticipating that being in a different type of work relationship does really require a conversation about it. And so there's an elephant in the room. There's relationship tension. It doesn't get named. It just festers, and problems not addressed typically don't go away. And if you're coming in from the outside and they loved their former leader, it's really easy to simply come in and say, "Okay, I'm the leader here, so I've just got to come in and show my strength." And you come in and you put your stamp on things. and you don't really acknowledge all those good things that happened before. You don't really, or you do it and you do it in just a little mention, but it's not enough. And there's not enough or no really expression of appreciation for all the good things from the former leader. There's no demonstration of I'm showing interest and I'm listening to the team about the things that they appreciated and some of those things that they would like to see keep going, because typically there's going to be a hybrid of you putting your stamp on things, as because you will need to as the leader, but also not completely disenfranchising people while you do it. Joanne, I was working with a big organization, large technology company, and they had a change in leadership. And the incoming leader, it was so interesting to see, they showed no interest in what had been done before. There was really no acknowledgement of past value, and they summarily scrapped the existing programs and the existing approaches, and they lost trust as a result. And at the same time, I was the observer in all this and doing some consulting, but to the amount that they would allow, because this new leadership team that came in, when they scrapped what was existing, they did not come in listening. And ultimately, what it wound up instilling was fear in the team, because people were afraid to be upset. They felt like, this is the new leader. Our livelihoods rely on this new leadership team. So we have to just be excited about what they're instituting and what they're saying. And that is not a great way to get started and ultimately to run a business. That's a recipe for when you lose trust and you instill fear. That's a recipe for losing some of your best people. So these, whether you're coming in from the outside, whether you're been promoted from within, or again, whether you own your own business. I mean, and with the owning your own business piece, the roles, if you're not talking about it, and here's a buddy, or here's a friend, here's a colleague, and you're bringing them in. I mean, if you don't talk about it, it's just different now. Roles can now get confused and toes get stepped on. And I've worked with people on projects, Joanne, who were lovely in a personal context. And then with work projects, if there were no ground rules, it becomes shocking, people's different approaches, shocking and unnerving. And then when you're unnerved and you're shocked, it has an impact on your performance. So all sorts of things, all sorts of negative consequences come of not, what you said, anticipating and not addressing the fact that the relationship has changed and not honoring that.
Wow, the words that I'm hearing, which are some of the things that we talk about in this podcast, it's that are applicable in so many other areas of our lives as well. It's right, like awareness, communication, openness, intention, and trust. Such big words. And I love how specific your this recommendations are, because we don't think about it. We tend to just, like you said, put a blind eye to it and be like, okay, whatever. I know it's happening, but it'll go away, or it's not that big of a deal. And or sometimes it's in a good way. Like, we're so focused on doing the work well, we don't always pay attention to what's going on around us, how it's affecting other people. So it's very specific and good. Again, good in other areas, because I can see how this applies to other transitions and other shifts, that it's not just about times when your role changes, or when you get a promotion, or when you grow. These are really important tips for life, for a lot of things. I can see how this applies to so many things. So I love how my brain gets going into where else can I apply this tip. So I hope that you're listening to the same. So Mim, you're being so detailed in a great way. So what should we do instead?
Well, you called it there, Joanne, is to communicate. And the motto that I give to my clients is, if in doubt, communicate. If in doubt, communicate. I think I might have a new motto as a result of this conversation. And that would be, as you said, anticipate and address. Anticipate and address is just anticipate. What are some of those things? It's so great to grow your business. It's so exciting to be doing that. It's so exciting to be getting to the next level as a leader. And we always want to look at the whole picture. So we always want to look at, as you said, what are the great parts about this? And then what are some of the challenging parts of this? And let's get out in front of those. So you want to be, as a leader, you want to be the one to call out the change in the situation. And you might be doing that in team meetings. You also might be doing that in one-on-ones, especially with that person who was your buddy. And if you got promoted over them. And so to have a conversation about it, you want to have some curiosity and to show interest in their point of view, show interest in their concerns about it, hear what they're worried about. And if you're coming in from the outside, hear about what's been done before. What I would encourage you to do is to people, when there's an elephant in the room and you show your curiosity, sometimes it's a good thing to show your curiosity. Sometimes people are afraid to speak up and to be honest about it. So you might start by, when you call out the change in the situation, you might start by sharing some of your perspective on it. So you prime the pump and you've declared a little bit first or disclosed a little bit first. Self-disclosure breeds more self-disclosure from other people. So you might want to lead the way in that as you show curiosity. And so you're both sharing your point of view on the shift in the relationship. And then I recommend that you have what I call the DTR talk. Joanne, I think I was 11 years old, and my oldest sister came back from her freshman year in college, and she came back with this whole new vocabulary that all the students in the dorms used of how they would talk about things. And she came back and she talked about the DTR. And I remember being 11 and saying, "What's the DTR?" And she said, "Oh, that's the define the relationship moment." So she had discovered college dating. And when you start dating and you have more than a few dates, then it's time to, quote, define the relationship. And it's such a good idea because that's exactly what we need to do at work when our relationships change. You need to share your vision for this new iteration of the relationship. You need to hear their vision for the new iteration of the relationship. And if you're going to come in, so that's my DTR recommendation. And then if you're going to come in and if you are going to make sweeping changes, gosh, you've got to acknowledge all those good things that happened before and all the good work and the value of that former leader, perhaps, if that was someone that everyone loved. You've got to show respect. You've got to get on their page and show respect for them and show respect for what they value and they respect. Doesn't mean that you are not going to make big changes. It's simply that you're going to show that you're not coming in and being a bull in a china shop without being thoughtful and without being honoring of them and what's come. And then if you do make those big changes, you got to share why. The why is the biggest thing. I mean, going back to childhood, if you have kids, you know that that's the biggest question is why? Why? You're going to hear that all the time. And we don't leave that. We all want to know, why is something happening? So the whys have to be good whys if you're making those big changes. And Joanne, I just recalled that we talked also about the personal relationships. If you are expanding your responsibilities as a business owner or as a leader in a larger organization or any kind of organization, it may be eating into some of your time, like as in some of your your work time might be expanding. And that is a conversation to have with your loved ones. That is a conversation to have with family. And that is a mutual communication session that you want to have about, so here's the opportunity in front of us. And here's my desire. Here's this direction. Here are some of the things that it's going to mean. I want to talk this through together. I want to talk through some of the impacts, and we can make plans together, as opposed to in any of these things that we've talked about today, as opposed to it just coming back to bite you because you don't anticipate it, and you don't address it.
Yes, you mentioned one of my favorite words, curiosity, and how we can use curiosity to ask questions and listen to learn, to listen with empathy and compassion. And instead of this just kind of full force forward movement without our ideas, and how that affects us in our relationships at work. But then, like you were saying, at home, let's not make assumptions. So often we make assumptions based on our filters and what's important to us, and to understand other people see it in different ways, especially for the people around us. So I'm like here feeling all your words, and it's so inspiring. Thank you. So it's good to think about it, and some of the things that you're saying of knowing, yes, it's exciting to have raises and growth and all of that, and to say, wait a minute, I need to pause and think of what are some of the consequences here? How is this affecting my relationships? This Is there a peer that now I'm gonna have to lead, and that creates some tension? Am I filling up big shoes and having to live up to those expectations, and how I redefine them? And how do I get people I love and trust involved in a different role? So those, I mean, just that awareness is so important. And I love what you said of don't leave it to chance, and how we need to address it intentionally, and build the trust there, and acknowledge how others feel. And I love it because I think this applies to almost everywhere in our lives, is when in doubt, communicate. We should say that over and over. When in doubt, communicate. I always say, we're never wrong when we're expressing ourselves from our emotions, and when we're asking questions to get that from someone else, and how that builds the trust even more. And then we can work together, and not just in everyone in their lane. So it's good. And like you said, it being very clear about our why, that awareness, and expressing it. So wow, I'm thinking also of how is this affecting me in my work and in my house, with my clients. I hope that you're all listening to how this applies to your life right now, and not just in this big shift. So Mim, what would be some words of wisdom that you would want to add to what we just said?
Well, I would simply say to reflect, to give yourself an opportunity to reflect. Relationships are central to our lives. They're central to our personal lives. They're central to our well health. You know that, Joanne. They're central to our work lives, certainly, which has been the major focus of what we've talked about. And this is something, when you're seeing a change and when you're growing, it's so exciting. And I recommend that you take some reflection time and you think through, okay, so what are all the positives as I move into this new phase of my work, my business, the level of my career? And then what are some of the things that I need to anticipate and get out in front of that will be challenging? And the main one that we've been looking at is relationships. So who's going to be impacted by this shift? And I've got to put myself in their shoes. How are they going to be looking at this? How are they going to be thinking about it? What are some of their concerns going to be? And to really give yourself some reflection time, and to map out thinking about the people, both professionally and personally, and then thinking about, all right, then what would be the best strategy to approach this individual, to address with this individual, to talk with the entire team? What would I do? What would I say? How might it backfire? And then what would I do then? So your relationship plan is just as important when you're growing as your business plan.
I feel that in my heart. Thank you so much. So, if you want to connect with Mim, don't hesitate and go to our website, successfulbutstruggling.com. And we have more information there and different ways to get in contact with Mim. And if you have any curiosity, talk about curiosity there. And stay tuned because our next episode of Successful But Struggling podcast will be right here.
Don't miss out on more strategies that will elevate you to new heights. Visit successfulbutstruggling.com now, where you'll discover exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with each of us individually. There you can dive deeper into how you, too, can take your personal and professional game to the next level. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Number 1, connect with us on the website. And number 2, tune in to the next episode.